Thomas Cole despised omegas. An omega homewrecker had destroyed his once happy family, and his mother had died of a broken heart. The childhood best friend he'd seen as his salvation was lured away by an omega, betraying him and nearly bankrupting his company. So he chose me, a completely unremarkable beta. And so began our completely unremarkable married life. Until I unexpectedly had a secondary presentation as an omega. What's that smell? That was the first thing Thomas said when he got home from his business trip. I took his coat, hung it up, and answered casually, probably the roasted sweet potatoes. He glanced at the dining table, his brow furrowing slightly. Is that all you had for dinner? Didn't the housekeeper cook? Seeing that he was about to go question someone, I quickly stopped him. No, I ate. I just got a craving for them later. Thomas stopped and turned his head slightly to look at me. His gaze drifted down to my neck. This time I spoke before he could. I slept on it wrong last night and pulled a muscle, so I put a pain relief patch on it. Does it still hurt? It's nothing, it's pretty much fine now. He nodded. He opened his mouth to say something, then closed it, pressing his lips together tightly. I wanted to change the subject as fast as possible. Do you want a late-night snack? I asked. No, Thomas answered bluntly, then paused. If you want something, have the kitchen make it, but don't eat too much. It's hard to digest. Great. His attention was successfully diverted. Now we'd just make a little more small talk, and then he'd go back to his study or bedroom to work. Just as I expected, the conversation ended, and he went upstairs. Only then did my tense nerves finally relax. 3 days ago, I'd been sound asleep when I suddenly developed a fever. I thought a little fever reducer would take care of it, but it just kept getting higher. I figured a trip to the hospital for an 4 would be enough to show my body who was boss. Instead, my body hit me with a critical blow. I had a secondary presentation. From a beta, I'd become an omega. The very thing Thomas hated and despised most in the world. I lingered downstairs for a long time, turning the range hood on to its highest setting and reapplying the inhibitor patch on my scent gland. 1 layer wasn't enough, he'd already caught a whiff of that cheap, sweet scent earlier. So I put on 3. Finally, I stuck a large herbal pain patch over them as camouflage. After I was done, I felt it might be a little overkill. He'd just finished a 2-week business trip and was visibly exhausted. He probably wasn't in the mood for anything tonight, but the moment I opened my bedroom door, I saw him sitting on my bed. He looked like he'd just showered, the tips of his hair still damp. His bathrobe was tied loosely at the waist, hanging open and offering a generous view of his chest. Aren't you tired today? I blurted out. Thomas paused for a second. A little, but I want you more. For a quiet, reserved man like him to say something so honest. It was so direct there was no room to refuse. Resigned, I walked over, grateful I had taken precautions. You're sleeping with that on? Didn't you say it was almost better? My heart skipped a beat. I quickly realized he was talking about my pain patch. Well, it's still a little bit. Thomas shifted back, gesturing for me to come closer. Sit here. Looks like he really had been holding back for too long and couldn't wait to get started. This position, from behind? No way. That was too dangerous. What if he ripped the patch off in the heat of the moment? While I was still hesitating, he grabbed my arm and pulled me down into his lap. Wait, 2 hands settled on my shoulders, kneading them with a controlled pressure that wasn't too hard or too soft. He was giving me a massage. Where does it hurt? As he spoke, he pressed into the hollow of my neck. The pressure was perfect, and it actually felt really good, the kind of satisfying ache you get from a deep stretch. My tense body slowly began to relax. But the next second, an indescribable, throbbing sensation exploded in the back of my neck, spreading instantly through my entire body and making me tremble uncontrollably. Is it here? Feels like you've layered these on pretty thick. As he said that, he focused his massage on that exact spot. I almost passed out. When I opened my mouth, my teeth were chattering. Stop. Don't. Thomas didn't stop, but he did lighten the pressure. Too hard? How about this? Ah! A soft moan escaped my throat, answering for me. He stopped. As the room fell silent, The sound of our breathing became intensely noticeable. I could feel the temperature rising from the man behind me. His hands slowly slid from my shoulders down to the buttons of my shirt. What was coming was coming. I want to lie on my back, not my stomach, I insisted. Of course, Thomas wasn't going to refuse such a small request. He quickly showed me just how eager a married alpha can be after 2 weeks of restraint. A hint of a smile touched his dark eyes. Did the massage work? Or did you prepare ahead of time? I looked away, biting my lower lip without answering. Neither was right. The change he was feeling was because I wasn't a beta anymore. I no longer needed a long warm-up, no longer so dry I needed outside help. I couldn't help but wrap my arms around him, a bitter sadness welling up inside me. How would Thomas react if he knew this body, the one that was making him lose control, belonged to an Omega? He'd be disgusted, surely. Right after we got married, I'd asked him if he would have still chosen me if I were an Omega. He'd frowned then, his tone sharp and resolute. Of course not. Thomas has 2 names tattooed on his back. His mother's and his childhood best friend's. Thomas once had a very happy family. A rich kid with a lot of money and a lot of love. Until his father cheated with an Omega, betrayed his marriage, and had another child. The family assets were all transferred to the homewrecker's name. Thomas's mother was driven mad, ending her short life in a sanatorium. His childhood best friend had been his only salvation. He'd helped him emerge from that dark time and build a company from scratch. But just as they were on the verge of success, he was seduced by an Omega from a rival company. He chose to betray their years of friendship, leaking trade secrets to the competition. Thomas's company was nearly bankrupted. He worked day and night, running himself ragged, just to pull it back from the brink. He hated the instinctual, primal attraction between alphas and omegas. That attraction could make people abandon their families, their reason, and everything they'd ever built together. That's why he chose me, the only beta in his marriageable circle. Unremarkable, with no pheromones, and unaffected by the pheromones of others. By the time our long lovemaking session ended, it was the middle of the night. Thomas cleaned me up and lay down right beside me. I was so tired I could barely get a word out, but I forced myself to remind him. Aren't you going back to your room? Thomas was so busy, always leaving early and coming home late, that he kept waking me up. So, in our 2nd month of marriage, he suggested separate rooms. Even after our most passionate nights, he would always clean up and go back to his own bed. Yeah, I've wrapped up the most important stuff. I won't be as busy for a while. I should have time to eat breakfast and dinner with you every day. Breakfast is at least 3 hours away. Thomas pulled me closer, his deep voice vibrating against my ear. You never pulled a muscle in your neck before we had separate rooms. So for now, we're sleeping together. That must have been what he'd been hesitant to say when he first got home. How could I get 2 pieces of bad news in the span of a single minute? I still hadn't figured out how to tell Thomas. We'd been married for less than a year, and he didn't have any real feelings for me yet. His concern and care for me were just products of a lifetime of good manners and a quality upbringing, not love. An alpha's rut was usually a perfect opportunity for a couple to deepen their bond, but for the 3 ruts he'd had since we met, Thomas had chosen to spend them at a containment center. He'd rather have tubes stuck in him, painfully siphoning off his excess pheromones, than come to me. Even when he had to come home to deal with work, he would load up on suppressants beforehand and stay 10 feet away from me at all times. Last time, I worked up the courage to offer to stay with him, but he calmly refused. You wouldn't be able to handle it. And that was that. But if omegas could do it, why couldn't a beta? Betas were physically much stronger than omegas. He just didn't want me to see his vulnerable side. He didn't want to let me into his heart. But I really wanted in. In the quiet rhythm of our life together, I'd started to develop a little crush on him. A huge crush. Because of that, I didn't want to just come clean and get a swift divorce. Before Thomas got back, I had already scheduled surgery to have my scent glands removed. I'd planned to get it done quietly while he was away, but the lead surgeon had to go out of town for a conference and wouldn't be back for 2 weeks. Are you going on a business trip in 2 weeks? No. Damn it. I stuffed a sunny-side-up egg in my mouth and chewed furiously. Since he wasn't busy, I needed to come up with an excuse to be legitimately gone for a few days in 2 weeks. Thomas slid his own sunny-side-up egg onto my plate. Is there anywhere you'd like to go? We can plan a trip soon. That was the last thing I wanted. I shook my head frantically. Nope, nowhere. Thomas looked up at me, his meaning clear. I still owe you a honeymoon. So that was it. He would give me everything except for his love. No, that's okay. I don't really feel like going out. Thomas pressed his lips together and didn't say another word. As our silent breakfast came to an end, I couldn't help but ask. I heard this is a critical time for the IPO. Are you sure it's okay to be taking it easy? His brow furrowed slightly, and his eyes darkened. Do you want me to be away on business? I looked at him earnestly. From a long-term development perspective for the company, yes. Screech. His chair scraped harshly across the floor. Thomas stood up, his face grim. That's none of your business. Thomas didn't come home for dinner. He's probably busy, I thought. After eating alone, I curled up on the sofa and zoned out until it got dark. Only then did it slowly dawn on me that Thomas might be angry. We'd never had a real conflict before. Even though our personalities, habits, and hobbies were completely different, we'd always gotten along harmoniously. Things were a little awkward in bed at first, but we'd slowly gotten used to each other. Most importantly, he never broke a promise. If he said he'd be home for dinner, he would be. The fact that I hadn't heard a word from him could only mean he didn't want to come home. Thinking back on what I'd said, it did sound a bit bossy and presumptuous. I'd overstepped. Did he think I was questioning his business acumen? That was a huge misunderstanding. I couldn't sit still anymore. I called the butler to confirm his schedule. Other than a business dinner in the afternoon, he had nothing else planned. I opened my messaging app and stared at his name. After carefully composing a message, I finally sent. Still busy? No. He replied so quickly. He must not be angry anymore. Then why wasn't he home? No, I couldn't ask that. I quickly deleted the text I was typing and tried a more roundabout approach. Have you had dinner? Should I have the kitchen save some for you? The indicator showed he was typing for a long time, but in the end, all I got were 3 cold words. Don't bother. Okay, still angry. I thought for a long time and decided to go apologize in person. Even though it was better to keep my distance from him right now, once a crack formed in a relationship, it was hard to fix. I wanted to stay with him. I couldn't let this fester. I took a quick shower, reapplied my inhibitor patches, and realized I didn't have an excuse to wear a pain patch anymore. I found a scarf and wrapped it around my neck, which covered the spot perfectly. Most of the lights in the coal tower were off, but the top floor was still lit up. When the elevator doors opened, I came face to face with his secretary, who was yawning widely. The moment he saw me, his dead-looking eyes lit up. Thank God. I mean, Mr. Sutton. The secretary looked like he was about to cry. After working nonstop for so long, they were finally supposed to have some downtime, but now the boss was in full-on burnout mode, pulling insane all-nighters. Are you guys working overtime? Nope, he said, dramatically wiping away a fake tear. Pure, unadulterated suffering. I felt a pang of guilt. I pulled out my phone and quickly sent him 5 cash tips in a row. You can go home. Buy yourself something nice. The secretary's expression changed in an instant. He said, "Oh, I couldn't possibly," while his fingers flew across the screen to accept the money. I watched him get into the elevator, beaming, then turned around to see Thomas leaning against his office doorway, arms crossed. His gaze was heavy. I had no idea how long he'd been watching. One look at him and the entire apology I had prepared vanished from my mind. My brain was a complete blank as I followed him into the office. The door closed behind us, and I still couldn't think of a single word. Thomas took the insulated food container from my numb hands and set it on the coffee table. Seeing me just standing there, he let out a barely audible sigh and broke the awkward silence. Is it cold outside? I snapped back to reality, my mind quickly rebooting. I clutched my scarf and said, without missing a beat, "You left a mark last night. I'm covering it up." Before he could reply, I gestured toward the container. "Tonight's soup is really good. You should try some." My trusty topic-changing technique seemed to have failed. Thomas was still staring at my scarf, his expression unreadable. There's no one else here. It's a hassle. I'll just leave it on. The second layer has shrimp dumplings Mrs. Davis just made. I peeled the shrimp myself. Okay. Thomas nodded. I hadn't even finished my sigh of relief when he spoke again. It's 82 degrees in here. Aren't you hot? Nope. There's sweat on your forehead. I never should have come. I stood there, frozen, as Thomas reached for me, unable to squeeze out a single word. Resisting now would just look too suspicious. As he unwound the last loop of the scarf, inspiration struck. I reached out and switched off the lights. HM? His movement paused. Why'd you turn off the lights? I squeezed my eyes shut and took a deep breath. Since it had come to this, we might as well just make up in bed. Or on the couch. It's too bright. Kills the mood. The man in front of me hitched his breath but said nothing. After a long moment, he let out a soft chuckle. The puff of air was like a kitten's paw brushing against my cheek, tickling my heart. What mood? He knew exactly what I meant, but he was playing dumb. I threw caution to the wind, pushed him down onto the sofa, and straddled him without a second thought. The kind you get from a little office fun. With that, the topic was thoroughly changed. Thomas completely forgot about my scarf and whether or not he'd left a mark on my neck. There wasn't one before, but there definitely would be after tonight. Light from the building next door spilled through the floor-to-ceiling windows. His collar was crisp, his tie perfectly knotted, the picture of a mature, serious businessman. But from the second button of his shirt down, it was a whole other, more scandalous scene. His Adam's apple bobbed slowly in the interplay of light and shadow. This is the first time you've been this forward. Thomas stared at me in the dim light, his tone noticeably lighter and more cheerful than before, laced with pleasure. Next time, give me a heads up. I'll send them home so you don't have to waste your money. He seemed to have misunderstood something again. Whatever. Let him misunderstand. He seemed to like it when I took the initiative, but that wasn't stopping him from slowly taking back control. While I still had some semblance of sanity, I hurried to say what I needed to say. Thomas, I didn't mean anything by what I said this morning. Please don't be angry, okay? Thomas lifted his head from my chest, breathing lightly. Okay, he said. I should apologize, too. I was harsh with you. Hearing him say that, the weight in my chest lifted, replaced by a sweet, fluttering feeling. But it wasn't time to relax yet. I hooked my arms around his neck and leaned in to kiss him. The sofa's too small. Let's go to your break room? The break room was mostly a walk-in closet, dark and quiet. There was no risk of him seeing my inhibitor patches. I stumbled as he led me, my body bumping against a cabinet, causing a series of crisp, clinking sounds. It sounded like glass vials hitting each other. HM? Is there something in the cabinet? Siphoned pheromones. Are you going into rut? No, Thomas was already too lost in the moment to care about much else. Brushing it off vaguely. My pheromone levels overload sometimes. It's annoying. So he even hated his own pheromones. And yet, just moments ago, he was kissing me and asking if we'd change the body wash at home, saying it smelled sweet and fragrant. I didn't dare imagine how disgusted he would be with me if he knew the truth, and with himself, for being unconsciously drawn to me, and Omega. He would probably break. I buried my face in his shoulder and secretly leaned in to sniff at his scent gland. A very light scent of wine, completely at odds with the deep desire he was showing. But then I remembered he had it siphoned regularly, and it made sense. Not daring to smell any more, I pulled back a little. Thomas must have thought I was trying to get away, because he instinctively tightened his hold on me. After a heavy collision, I heard something fall to the floor and shatter. My brain hadn't even processed what it was before my body reacted violently. All my strength drained away, but my temperature shot up. What had just exploded in the small space were Thomas's pheromones. Rich, sharp, and so potent I couldn't resist it. I couldn't let him know I could smell it, but the dam of my rationality was crumbling uncontrollably. Thomas, stop. It hurts. It really, really hurt. We couldn't continue. If we continued, I was going to die from the pain. Thomas was supposed to respect my wishes, but he didn't stop. No matter how much I begged, it was like he couldn't hear me. In fact, he became even rougher, like a predator that had tasted blood for the first time, pinning its prey with sharp claws, possessing, tearing, devouring. All my struggles were useless, and even my whimpers were swallowed up by his mouth. Just as I thought my body was about to be torn in two, a sharp, piercing pain shot through the back of my neck. My eyes flew open in disbelief. Time seemed to stop. My mouth was open, but I couldn't make a sound. A strange sensation flooded my body, making it tremble instinctively. Out of control, Thomas had followed his instincts and bitten through all 3 layers of my inhibitor patches. He had marked me. Sitting in my family's car, my body was still trembling uncontrollably, and the fever wouldn't break. My older brother, Alex, had a grim expression as he floored the gas. A newly marked Omega desperately needs their alpha's comfort. But all I could do was hug a small pillow in the car, all while using what little energy I had to resist the pheromones radiating from a furious Alex. "Can you rein it in a little? You stink." Alex shot me a look in the rearview mirror, letting out a humorless laugh. "Are you serious? Who was it that called me sobbing?" "'Kay, it was me." I was in such a panic that he was the only person I could think of. My phone buzzed. It was a message from the Cole family doctor. Thomas was conscious now. His rut came early. It was probably triggered by exhaustion from all the recent travel. So it was a rut. Of all the possibilities I'd imagined, this was the most acceptable one. TSK. Stop worrying about him and start worrying about yourself. I told you from the beginning you shouldn't have agreed to this marriage. When our 2 families decided on the marriage, my entire family was ecstatic. Only Alex was against it. He said that being with someone who had a traumatic past and deep-seated psychological issues was bound to be difficult. At the time, I thought he had a point, but I couldn't refuse. I still think he has a point, but I don't care. I'm willing. He'll be at the containment center for a while. I can get the surgery done without him ever knowing. I should have been relieved, but my heart felt heavy. I knew very well that the trigger for Thomas's sudden rut wasn't exhaustion. It was me, overwhelmed by the scent of his pheromones. I had to get this stupid gland cut out as soon as possible. "Leo." My brother roared my name and slammed on the brakes. I lurched forward, hitting the back of the seat. My already fuzzy head spun. "Are you out of your goddamn mind? What you should be doing right now is breaking the mate bond and starting your life as an Omega." I rubbed my head. "Who wants to be an Omega? I don't want him to hate me." Alex pointed at me, sputtering you, for a while before giving up. His face red, he finally choked out, "I give up," and got out of the car. He stood outside and chain-smoked 2 cigarettes before getting back in, his tone much softer. "Leo, have you ever thought about what would happen if, one day, he finds out you used to be an Omega? He'd hate you for deceiving him, right? It's better to just cut ties now. Rip off the Band-Aid. Please, you have to listen to me." He was coaxing me like I was a little kid who couldn't think for himself. "Alex, I need to correct you. I have always been a beta. I was before I was with him, and I will be from now on," I said matter-of-factly. "Besides, if you don't tell and I don't tell, how will he ever know?" Alex was speechless. After a long silence, he started the car again and said quietly, "I honestly can't tell if you're being rational or completely insane." I opened the photo of the hospital room the doctor had sent and bit my lip as I looked at the pale-faced man. I'm a fool in love, and I know it. On the 3rd day of Thomas's stay at the containment center, he called me. I answered, but he didn't say anything for a long time. Listening to his quiet breathing on the other end, I couldn't help but feel a little anxious. What did the silence mean? Had he remembered? Was it possible he was still lucid back then? I unconsciously clenched the hem of my shirt and ventured, "Thomas?" He responded with a low hum, then fell silent again. After a while, he finally asked, "Does it still hurt?" His voice was deep, and through the phone's filter, it had a strange, lonely quality. He didn't sound like he was in a good mood. How should I answer? I didn't know what he was referring to. My body didn't hurt anymore, but the spot on my gland was still aching faintly. After much deliberation, I gave him a vague answer. It's okay. I'm sorry, he said. I could hear you crying out in pain, but I couldn't control myself. Couldn't stop. I shook my head, then remembered he couldn't see me and quickly said, It's okay. I can handle it. But Thomas said, It won't happen again. I swear, nothing like that will ever happen a second time. Thomas was acting strange. Was it the rut affecting him? I learned in health class that during this period, an alpha needs both physical and psychological comfort. I had zero practical experience, so all I could do was offer verbal reassurance. I'm not in any pain at all. Really? We're legally married, you don't have to be so formal with me. It's okay if it takes us a while to adjust. I'll be here with you, guaranteed to be cheerful and lift any psychological burden. But all I got was a pained-sounding grunt from Thomas before he hung up the phone. I stood there listening to the dial tone for a long time, trying to suppress the wave of sadness that was threatening to undermine my resolve. I hit redial. No answer. I didn't want to bother him, so after confirming with the doctor that he was okay, I quietly put my phone away. A week after Thomas went to the containment center, my longing for him reached an all-time high. Felt like thousands of ants were crawling all over my skin. I desperately wanted him to hold me tight. This must be the power of the mating bond. Since I was mostly recovered, I went back to our house. The moment I walked in, I went straight to his room. It was decorated in cool, minimalist tones, a perfect match for his personality. I had no time for sightseeing. I pulled open his closet and buried my face in his clothes. I took a deep breath. All I could smell was his woody cologne. A little disappointed, I turned and wriggled into his bed. Unfortunately, the scent of his pheromones was very faint in his sheets, too, doing nothing to soothe the itch in my heart. I lay there for a while, feeling lost, when it suddenly occurred to me that if Thomas made it a habit to keep his pheromone levels extremely low, there must be siphoning equipment and collected pheromones somewhere in the house. The craving completely took over my brain. Even though I knew it was wrong to go through his things, I couldn't stop myself. I searched his bedroom, then his study. When I pulled open one of the drawers, I heard the familiar clinking of glass vials. I was stunned by the number of them. How much had he siphoned? I carefully picked up a small vial. The cool glass felt cold against my palm and wouldn't warm up. My fingertips trembled as they rested on the cap. Should I really use this? Should I really use the very pheromones Thomas hated most to satisfy my own desires? In the end, I gritted my teeth and put it back, afraid I would change my mind. I stood up to leave the room full of temptation. In my haste, I knocked over the desk calendar. As I set it upright, my eyes froze on the page. Who eats roasted sweet potatoes for dessert? The handwriting was strong and sharp. It was Thomas's. I flipped back through the pages. Tucked among his normal business memos were all sorts of little notes about me. Obsessed with deveining shrimp. I don't get it. He looked at the same travel guide for half an hour. He must want to go. A very light sleeper. Woke up when I just touched his head. The oldest note was from 6 months ago. Loves ceremony and celebrating anniversaries. The opposite of me. I remembered that day. It was our 99th day together. I had excitedly prepared a special dinner just for the two of us, but he had completely forgotten. Back then, I hadn't yet accepted the fact that he didn't love me, and I was so hurt I buried myself under the covers and cried. He didn't say anything, but he cleared his schedule the next day and took me to a restaurant I'd been wanting to try. These notes didn't seem like he'd made a point to write them down. They seemed more like things he'd jotted down absent-mindedly while his mind wandered at work. Even if they were just random thoughts, it was hard not to read into them. Did he care about me? I suddenly felt flustered. A flicker of hope sparked in my chest, but I didn't dare let myself believe it. I messaged my brother. If someone unconsciously keeps track of another person's habits, does that mean they like them? He replied quickly. I remember you don't like the smell of smoke. Isn't that just basic family decency? Your love-addled brain is so far gone nobody would eat it even if you deep-fried it. Wake up. I had no comeback for that. The tiny spark that had just ignited was instantly extinguished. My heart sank. I suddenly understood why Thomas had hung up so abruptly after I specifically mentioned we were legal partners. In his mind, we were just family, bound by law, not lovers. The night before my appointment, Thomas came home. I didn't know what he'd been through, but he was noticeably thinner. My heart was a mess of emotions, worry, and also annoyance. Why was he back so soon? I hadn't even come up with an excuse yet. Thomas studied me carefully for a moment, then raised his hand. I thought he was going to check the bite mark on my neck and instinctively covered it, taking a step back. His hand froze in midair before he slowly lowered it. His already dark eyes seemed to dim even further. "Leo, I'm going to be gone for a while." "Gone?" From his expression, this didn't sound like a business trip. He nodded. "If you need anything, talk to my secretary. Or you can go back to your family's place. I've already spoken with your brother." Wait, a huge question mark rose in my mind, tangled with threads of unease. I grabbed his sleeve, my voice growing urgent. "Where are you going?" Thomas's face was placid, his tone calm. "Don't worry. If things go well, I'll be back soon. And when I get back, we'll take that honeymoon." I couldn't care less about some stupid honeymoon. What if things didn't go well? Thomas pressed his lips together and didn't answer. I tossed and turned in bed, unable to sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, all I could see was the flicker of pain in Thomas's eyes when I'd shied away from him. My mind was in turmoil, and the craving I had suppressed earlier came rushing back. This time, my reason didn't win out over my desire. I snuck into his study, but the drawer was empty. Not only were all the little vials gone, but the siphoning equipment had also disappeared. Now, there wasn't a trace of Thomas's pheromones left in the entire house. I had the strange feeling that his identity as an alpha was about to disappear, too. I was so sleep-deprived I felt like I was in a daze. I numbly followed the medical assistant through the pre-op checks and went back to the consultation room to wait for the final assessment. My thoughts couldn't help but wander. What was Thomas planning to do? Was the company facing some kind of unprecedented crisis? Or did he have someone else? Men always feel guilty after they cheat, which is why they try to make up for it. No, Thomas wasn't that kind of person. In the middle of my anxious spiraling, the doctor walked in with my chart. He looked even more agitated than I felt. "I'm retiring in 3 years." I nodded. "Oh wow, you've worked hard all these years. You know it's hard, and you still want to tarnish my reputation in my final years?" His voice suddenly shot up, and he slammed the chart down on the desk in frustration. "Every single day, it's either someone in rut who wants their glands removed, or someone pregnant who wants their glands removed. Do you think your glands are tomatoes in your backyard garden? You can just pick them whenever you want?" I blinked slowly. My ability to comprehend English had flown out of my body. Pregnant? Pregnant. My scalp tingled. I rushed forward to look at the reports, but my eyes were met with a wall of medical jargon I couldn't understand at all. "Doctor, could there be a mistake?" He looked like he was about to explode. "Are you questioning me?" No, that's not. What I mean is, how could I be pregnant? You know whether you did the deed or not, don't you?" I did, but I was dumbfounded. The sharp, piercing pain I'd felt that day had come from my womb. I was so used to being a beta, I had completely forgotten about taking precautions. I stood there, at a complete loss, babbling incoherently. Why was life playing one cruel joke on me after another? "So, can I still have them removed?" The doctor gave me a look you'd reserve for a small, stupid animal. I meekly shut my mouth. A new law passed 2 years ago had made non-medical abortions illegal. After you give birth, you can consider having them removed then. I could barely hide one gland. How was I supposed to hide a fetus? Unless Thomas was gone for a year or two. The moment I thought of him, a familiar voice came from outside the door. "Doctor, may I come in?" I froze, my mind thrown into chaos. It was Thomas. What was he doing here? Was he following me? My reaction was a second too slow to stop the doctor from saying, "Come in." With no time to think, I snatched the reports from the desk and dove under the doctor's desk. Almost as soon as I was down, the door opened. Faced with the doctor's confused stare, I shot him a desperate look, begging him not to give me away. The doctor awkwardly smoothed down his already sparse hair, which I took as a yes. Thomas's footsteps grew closer and stopped beside the desk. The surgery time, can it be moved up? The sooner, the better. Surgery? My heart dropped. Was Thomas sick? I wanted to peek out and see him, but I couldn't. The doctor frowned and sighed heavily. I don't understand you young people. There are so many ways to live peacefully with your glands, but you always have to choose the most extreme, most damaging option. I don't want it. Thomas's reply was calm, but it sent a shockwave through my heart. He didn't want his glands. He didn't want to be an alpha anymore. I've told you several times your pheromone flare-ups are not due to a physiological problem. It's mainly a psychological block. Why do you keep suppressing it? If you slowly get used to it and release it gradually, there won't be any issues. The doctor tapped on his tablet, pulling up a file. I remember you have a partner, right? Look, what a perfect match. The two of you should… The doctor's voice cut off abruptly. He looked at me under the desk in shock, his eyes practically bugging out of his head. I silently crawled out, stood up, and met Thomas's stunned gaze. Thomas, you're coming home with me. Now, we didn't say a word to each other on the way home. When we got back, I pulled him into the bedroom and pinned him against the door. Why? He looked down, taking in all my worry, and also the patch on my neck, the faint bruises peeking out from my collar, the scabbed over bite mark. A look of pain flashed across Thomas's face. He closed his eyes. Actually, more than those omegas, I hate my father and my friend for not being able to control themselves. I hate that I'm the same kind of person as them. I hate my instincts. I don't want to hurt you again. My heart felt like it was being squeezed by a giant hand. My chest was tight and I couldn't breathe. So his strange behavior these past few days was all because he was blaming himself, feeling guilty for losing control. He'd even made the decision to give up his alpha identity. But I was the source of his loss of control. Thomas, you can't think that way. You're nothing like them. They had weak wills and gladly let themselves indulge. But you're not like that. I took a deep breath, reached up, and picked at the corner of my inhibitor patch. I hesitated for a moment, then gritted my teeth and ripped it off. Alex was right. There shouldn't be any deception in a relationship. I couldn't let this continue, knowing how much pain it was causing Thomas. The sweet scent of caramel filled the air. I turned my head slightly, exposing the back of my neck. Thomas, this was all because I seduced you. You didn't do anything wrong. His eyes fell on my scarred and battered scent gland. His pupils trembled, and his eyes widened slowly. This time, I didn't pull away from his outstretched hand. His warm fingertips brushed lightly over the gland, sending a tingling sensation from the top of my head to the tips of my toes. I gritted my teeth and endured it until he spoke. When, afraid he would think I had been deceiving him from the start, I answered honestly, 3 days before you came back from your trip. When he didn't say anything, I added quickly, I have the medical records to prove it. I started frantically digging through the reports. Why didn't you tell me? He stopped my fumbling hands, his expression suddenly hardening as he frowned. So today you weren't at the hospital following me. What were you there for? How should I explain this? If he found out I was also there to get my glands removed, he'd probably feel even worse. I looked down at the report in my hands. On the top sheet, in the conclusion section, it said, gestational sac visible. It was tiny, but it was real. The fruit of my and Thomas's unremarkable marriage. Since finding out, I hadn't had the extra energy to process the news. But with Thomas standing in front of me now, I could finally face it head on. He had a right to know, too. Thomas, you might be a father. Thomas said he needed some time. I understood. Anyone would be reeling after being hit with 2 bombshells in such a short period. I was prepared to accept whatever decision he made. It was just uncomfortable, physically uncomfortable. I was clawing at the walls, desperate for Thomas's comfort. I thought the mating bond was powerful, but now it seemed the pregnancy hormones were even stronger. But I couldn't bother him right now, and all the pheromones in the house had been cleared out. All I could do was bite down on the corner of my blanket and curl up in a helpless ball. I looked online and found that a shot of suppressants could help. I saw a glimmer of hope and ordered some from a delivery service. When it arrived, I rushed downstairs, tearing open the package as I walked back. When I looked up, Thomas was leaning against the wine cabinet. "Why are you ordering takeout? Are you hungry? It's not food." The ice cube in his glass clinked. He set the glass down and took a couple of steps closer, only then seeing what I was holding. "Why did you buy suppressants?" I told him the truth. "I heard they can help with..." A shadow fell over me as he blocked the light from the dining room. He reached out and touched my cheek. "Where does it hurt?" "I'll call the doctor." I never expected that after everything that had happened, we could still talk to each other so calmly, so normally. Thomas was actually very gentle. So gentle that my heart felt all sour and, for no reason at all, a little wronged. So instead of saying I was fine, what came out of my mouth was, "Without you, I feel awful." The moment the words were out, Thomas clearly froze. But since I'd already said it, I had to just push through. "I really need your pheromones right now. Can you help me?" A flicker of struggle and resistance crossed Thomas's face. Disappointment swelled in the silent standoff, drowning my already faint hope. My fingers tightened around the bag of suppressants. I bit my lower lip and was the first to back down. "It's okay, never mind. I can just use this. What do you need me to do?" I thought I'd misheard and looked up sharply. For the first time, I saw helplessness and panic on this always composed, self-possessed man. I might not be very good at it. I shook my head frantically. No, you'll be great." Thomas didn't trust himself. He used half a dose of the suppressants I'd ordered before he dared to get close to me. His hot breath ghosted over the back of my neck, then paused just before touching me. I clutched the bedsheets nervously. "If you really can't, we don't have to continue. Don't force yourself." "I'm not forcing myself. I love you, so I will accept all of you." He paused, his breath warm against my skin. "If it hurts, tell me to stop." I didn't hear the last part at all. My brain processed the words "I love you" and promptly crashed. No matter what else came in, the only thing echoing in my mind was, "Thomas said he loves me. Am I dreaming?" But the stinging on my gland was sharp and clear, and the feeling of rich pheromones being infused into my body was very real. I couldn't help but whimper. Thomas immediately pulled back. "Are you uncomfortable?" No, it felt too good. It was embarrassing to say out loud. So I buried my face in the blanket and whispered, "It's not enough." Thomas took 2 more doses of suppressants during the comforting session, which ended without any further incidents. I could feel his palpable sigh of relief. After cleaning up, he got up to leave, but I quickly reached out and grabbed his hand. "Aren't you going to sleep here?" Thomas's Adam's apple bobbed slightly, but he didn't answer. I looked at him with pleading eyes. "When you're not here, I sleep on my neck wrong. People, once they know they are loved, will always push their luck." Thomas pulled back the covers and lay down again. After only a moment's hesitation, he wrapped his arms around me. "You don't actually like roasted sweet potatoes." And I hadn't pulled a muscle in my neck. "Sweet potatoes, probably." His answer was clear without him needing to say it. "Thomas, starting tomorrow, let's reduce the suppressants by 1 dose each day, until you don't need them at all. Can you do that?" His deep voice rumbled by my ear. "I'll try my best." "Only try your best?" I took his hand and placed it on my still flat stomach. "Do you think the suppressants could have side effects that they might affect me and the little one in here? I can do it." As he said that, his hand suddenly slid downwards. I grew alert. "What are you doing?" Thomas leaned in and nibbled gently on my earlobe. I suddenly feel like my performance earlier wasn't good enough.